Grade 1 race held each spring at Keeneland on the turf, the Jenny Wiley Stakes often brings together some of the toughest turf fillies and mares in the country. That is fitting, considering the race is named after perhaps one of the toughest women ever to live and survive in frontier times. ThoroFan takes a look at the name behind the race for the Jenny Wiley. Born in Pennsylvania in 1760, Jenny Sellards grew up in the Keystone State until the age of 19, when the family moved to what is now Bland County, Virginia. Her life would go on to be anything but bland from then on. Not long after moving, she met and then married Thomas Wiley. Settling down to start a family in a cabin Thomas had built for them, she then lived what many would consider the life of a wife in those times, taking care of the house and raising 4 children with Thomas. Just 10 years after being married, Jenny's life would never be the same, and all because of a case of mistaken cabin identity, really. Frontier life was not easy on anyone in those days, and making matters worse was the area that the Wileys decided to settle down in saw constant skirmishes with the Native Americans in the area who were defending their land and resources from what they considered hostile invaders. In those days, there really was not mediation of issues, and disputes were often basically settled in bloodshed.
He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue. That's the Chicago way.
Yeah, kinda like that. A settler named Tice Harmon had recently killed 2 Cherokees, and the Native Americans looked to exact revenge by storming his cabin and killing him and anyone else there. On October 1st, 1789, they hatched their plot, and members of various tribes assembled in the woods to storm that cabin. Their calls to each other, which sounded like owl calls, were picked up by Jenny's brother-in-law, who raced back to her cabin to warn Jenny, whose husband who had left for the day to go to a trading post, that an attack was coming, and she should get the children and leave immediately. Jenny thought the natives would not attack till nightfall, and so she said she would leave as soon as the chores she had to finish were done. It would prove to be a fateful and fatal decision for many. Just as Jenny had finished the chores she had and was getting ready to leave, did the Indians burst through the door, quickly scalping and killing her brother and 3 of her children as they shouted the name Harmon. Quickly realizing that the Native Americans had attacked the wrong cabin, she pleaded with them to understand that this was not the cabin, while clutching her 1-year-old child tightly to prevent him from being taken and killed as well. While the Native Americans did not speak English, they did seem to recognize their mistake and paused, conferring among themselves and finally agreeing not to kill Jenny or her son, but to kidnap them instead and take them with her. Carrying a 1-year-old and being pregnant with the family's 5th child did not make travel easy for Jenny, as she was forced to keep up a very grueling pace as the Native Americans tried to keep ahead of the settlers who they knew would be coming after them. Soon her son became very ill, and his illness, in addition to her exhaustion, was slowing the group down. With her son getting weaker and weaker, the Native Americans finally took him from her and killed him right there in front of her. A short time later, while resting in a cave, she gave birth to another son. Sadly, his life would end at the hands of the Native Americans as well, when he failed to pass what they called the Warrior's Test, or Test of the Waters, where he would be floated down the river on a small raft, and if he did not cry, he would be saved. As winter was setting in, Jenny was forced to do many of the hardest jobs at the campsite the Native Americans had set up. During this time, she did manage to learn a little of their language, and even taught some of them the art of weaving. Soon she learned that she and another person they had captured were to be burnt at the stake. It was at this point that she started to plan her escape. Tied to a tree while some other Native Americans went off hunting, she had the good fortune of a rainstorm loosening the hide straps that had been used to tie her up, and she was able to break free and escape. What followed was a harrowing game of cat and mouse between her and the Native Americans, with her sheer will to live and a few spouts of good fortune enough to keep her from being recaptured. Remarkably, she was able to make her way along streams and roads that eventually brought her back towards her hometown area. Finally coming to see a cabin across the river's edge from where she was, she recognized the cabin's owner, Henry Skaggs, and he helped her get across the river to safety just before the Native Americans came across that spot. Finally, after months of life and death struggles, mental and physical exhaustion, and trials that no one should have to endure, she once again was free. Jenny was reunited with Thomas Wiley after all of this, and they eventually moved to Kentucky and started a new family of 6 more children. Living to the age of 71, she died in 1831. Her grave sits in Johnson County, Kentucky, overlooking the Big Sandy River. Being the folk hero she was, Jenny Wiley has quite a few things named after her, most notably the Jenny Wiley State Resort Park near Prestonburg, Kentucky. Keeneland Racecourse also created a race in her name starting in 1989. The race, contested on the turf for fillies and mares, eventually rose to Grade 1 status in 2012 and brings together the top grass fillies and mares annually to compete. Some might think about renaming it the Chad Brown Stakes, since the conditioner has won the last 3 runnings, with Sister Charlie in 2018 and Rushing Fall in 2019 and 2020. Perhaps one of the best renewals, though, featured fan favorite Tepin, who took the race in 2016 and went on to have a racing career that showed all the grit and determination of the race's famous namesake.
Coaxing Tepin toward the leader as they come toward the 8th pole. Then Illuminate, followed by Tiger Ride. Wakila is running late from the outside. Tepin up through the gearbox now into the final furlong, chased by Wakila, but 6 lengths between them. Nothing like turning the Keeneland lawn into your personal playground. It is all Tepin to win the Coolmore. Jenny Wiley. Wakila with a big run to be second, Illuminate third, and Decita finished 4th. 1 minute.